Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry, and tonight it's time for something special. I'm wearing my green cloak with the hood up, the headphones are off because I do not need them, and I'm wearing my shirt, my special replica shirt that I purchased at the most recent Fighting Fantasy Fest last year or the year before. Because tonight I'm going to be playing some Lone Wolf. Now, when I was a little boy, I loved my bedtime stories. I loved the stories I was told at school. I loved the things I learned. And in time, as I learned to read, I began to love the one or two Fighting Fantasy books that I had. And I got hold of one Golden Dragon game book around this point, and when I would have been about 11 or 12, I fancied a second or third Fighting Fantasy book. And I went into the local newsagent just across the road from the town bookshop. It's not a bookshop anymore. I think it's a pizza place. Sorry, it turned into a bakery, then a pizza delivery place, and so on. So I went into the local W.H. Smith's because they had a few game books, and there on the shelf was this amazing thing that greeted my eye, and it was called Lone Wolf Book 3, The Caverns of Calt. Yeah, they didn't have the first two books in there that day, and this was immediately visually eye-catching. Alright, we got a monster that's green, and the hero's wearing green, and the floor's kind of green, and green's the best colour in the whole world, and even this wall is a bit green. I love this already. And there was a wizard here who looked a bit concerned. There was another wizard in the background casting some kind of lightning spell, and this monster had a load of tentacles, and the hero, he looked really grim and stern, and he was going to fight that monster. It's going to be great and amazing. And down at the bottom it said, Lone Wolf, winner of the Game Book of the Year award in 1985 and 1986. Well, guess what? This would have been 1987 or 1988, so I was really impressed already. I thought, wow, the Fighting Fantasy books don't have winner of any Game Book award on the cover. I mean, they've got the Fighting Fantasy logo, and it's very big and recognizable, and it just looked great. And I thought, you know what, I'll play this. And I bought it, and I took it home, and I played the adventure. I played it so many times. I played it back to front. I actually created Lone Wolf fan art of Lone Wolf wielding the Sword and a warhammer in the other hand, with a beard, because how can this be a hero without a beard? Come on, right? Anyway, it was some time before I was able to get hold of any of the other Lone Wolf books, but what captured me immediately about this book was there were options to use items that did not exist in the book, that couldn't be collected or picked up. Items from previous books which could be carried over into this one, and items from this book could be carried over into the next books of the series. And I loved that because I'd been wanting to do that with Fighting Fantasy books anyway, and they just didn't really offer the option. The Sorcery series wasn't really on my radar at that point. And there was some kind of item called the Sword, which I presumed was some kind of sword, which appeared to be a weapon and very magical and very powerful, obviously obtained in one of the previous two books. But the most important thing I liked about the ability to use items from previous books is that they were not required. They were not necessary to complete this book. You did not need to purchase all the previous books in order to complete this one. It helped to have items from previous books, but they were optional. They were sort of a nice little thank you for playing the earlier books. And hey, remember that thing you found in book 1 or book 2? You might want to use it now. Another thing I liked about the Lone Wolf series is that while Fighting Fantasy pushed the one true path mindset, and not every Fighting Fantasy book is a one true path book. One or two of them really are. Yeah, I'm looking at you beneath Nightmare Castle. After after the point where you decide to go back into the castle, you can't take a single wrong choice or you fail. And it is very linear at that point. Anyway, so the nice thing about Lone Wolf is, rather than being the correct choice to take, instead you're presented with a number of options which are the flavour of the next portion of the adventure that you will experience, and it's a flowchart. So let's take our magician here and his lightning forking off in different directions. This is like a fighting fantasy book, right? It goes off in different directions, and eventually one of those directions will lead you to the end of the adventure that you wish to achieve. Whereas a Lone Wolf book is more like this monster with all its tentacles. You can choose whichever tentacle you want to tangle with, and they'll all lead back to the body of the monster, to its head, to its big glowing eye, right? And so fighting fantasy goes off in different directions like a spider diagram. Lone Wolf is like a flowchart. It's like, here's your beginning. Choose one of these 3 options. They will lead you to the middle here. Then, this is a set-piece encounter you can't avoid, but these 3 different routes you can have taken to it will have been different flavours, some of which will be easier or harder for you depending on choices you have made in the past. And then you get to choose like 3 or 4 more options, and they will lead you to this skull down here, and then a few more which will lead you to the winner of the Game Book Year Award, essentially. So because you get to choose from a number of skills and special abilities in Lone Wolf, similar to the Way of the Tiger, in fact, it's not so much do you have the skill that is required to continue the adventure, as was sometimes the case in The Way of the Tiger, where not having certain skills would make it very difficult to continue, but rather, you do not know which of the paths you choose will require which skills on an initial playthrough, and you will generally never be faced with a situation where none of the skills available are ones that you have chosen. However, eventually you'll sort of learn, oh, this is the path I like through this book. And so it's not, the options of routes and paths and choices are less to do with success or failure and more to do with which skills would you like to use in this story? How would you like the story to go? Yes, there are definitely moments where not having certain skills can kill you, but those moments are almost never in the unavoidable core set-piece encounters, but rather tend to be on the optional branches you have chosen. Yeah, obviously the end of book 5, I think, is completely the opposite to that, where you need to go through a maze in the dark with a monster that is hunting you and will kill you if it catches you, and you need to take a number of blind choices in a maze, left or right choices. You need to take 5 correct 50-50 choices in a row, and all the wrong choices are auto kills. It's ridiculously hard for the end of a book. And it's the first point in the series where the fighting fantasy rule breaks. I am very fond of Lone Wolf. I've been meaning to feature it on the channel for a long time. In fact, I tried to record it once previously, and I kind of messed things up badly, because I had a good idea what I wanted to do in the first book. There was a particular thing I wanted to do, and I forgot how to get to that thing and messed it up and got a bit upset. And unfortunately, because I hadn't separated the adventure from the introduction and character creation, I kind of was like going to scrap the recording. So here we are. A proper attempt this time. I'm going to try to play through as much of the series as I want, but one book at a time with gaps in between. In the past, I have played the first 9 books. However, I would point out that while this is the cover of book 3 I am familiar with, it may not be the cover you are familiar with, because the books have had a lot of different covers over the years. For example, book 1, I had this cover. Book 2, I had this one. This is not scrolling very friendly. For book 3, I had this one. I had pretty much the original covers for the first 4 books. For book 4, this one, not this one, right? Which is the one more people will probably be familiar with. Book 5, I had this one. Book 6, I think that one. And for 7, book 7 is the book I have only played once. I think this one, but I'm not sure. Okay. Book 8, I had this cover. Book 9, definitely this cover. And for book 10, I think also the Beaver Books covers. So this one for 11. And for book 12, I'm not sure. Probably this one, because that looks very familiar. However, as you can see, there have been a number of different covers over the years for different countries, and additionally, different editions. So the American editions have very different covers. They depict Lone Wolf as being very blonde, whereas the English covers depict him as having fair, light brown or blonde hair. The original Gary Chalk pictures, it's a little harder to tell. In the Beaver books, it's definitely a sort of light brown colour. And that's what I'm used to. The people of Sommerlund are described as being fair hair, and a lot of fans insist Lone Wolf must be blonde because fair means blonde hair. No, fair hair does not mean blonde hair. It means blonde, light brown, sun-bleached brown. It can even include sort of gingery, light, orangey colours. It's just very light, faint colours as opposed to strong, vibrant colours. And I'm just used to Lone Wolf having brown hair. Now, at one point, the people at Mongoose Publishing decided to put out the Magnamund Mega Deal. They had struck a deal to publish all of the existing Lone Wolf books, 28 of them, and the 4 unpublished books, which had not yet been written, and 2 trilogies of novels, for a total of 38 books. Is it 32 plus 6? Yeah, 38, I think. They didn't do that. Mongoose put out the first 16 books and 2 of the novels, so 18 of the 38, so practically half. I think they did actually get to a 19th book, possibly 17 books and 2 novels, but that was it. The Mongoose editions were unfortunately not very good. They had issues. Firstly, they added additional material, like a little sub-adventure at the end of each book, which was you'd play a minor side character or something and do something that tied in with the main story. It was very nice. That was good. However, the Mongoose books had a lot of printing errors. One of the books, I think book 4, was so bad they had to send out 2 or 3 replacements for it as they corrected more and more mistakes. Additionally, the maps in the Mongoose books were very dark, and they looked like modern maps, very modern maps. Whereas, and I'm going to blatantly show this now, the maps in the original Lone Wolf books looked like a map that would actually exist in the world that Lone Wolf would be carrying on his person. And that really helped immerse you in the adventure. Whereas I don't have a good example of a Mongoose map. It would have been a bit darker. All of this beautiful illuminated border would be gone. And things would be squashed up against the side and writing very small, hard to read. And it would look more modern and less sort of beautiful medieval or storybook, picture book kind of feel. Then the internal illustrations for the Mongoose books were black and white line art, which is fine, because, hey, the original illustrations in the first books were black and white line art, but while the original illustrations in the first books were classic 80s fantasy, heavy on the medieval aspects of the culture of the world, so, the armour and weapons and everything would look very authentic, and the foot soldiers would look like medieval foot soldiers. The Mongoose illustrations looked like 1950s American military cartoons for squaddies who were in the army and wanted to see characters who looked like them. There were a lot of square-head American 1980s action hero haircuts, and lots of straps and pouches and things that looked more like modern commando gear than, oddly placed leather things with stars up, things that just didn't look right for the world. It just looked too modern in many ways. After Mongoose gave up on publishing the books halfway through, they put out an announcement saying that, they hadn't put the books out, and if any of us wanted to ask for a refund, those of us who had paid up front for the whole mega deal, and I was one of those few, then we could ask for a refund. So many of us did. 2 of us got a refund, the rest were ignored. Possibly more than 2, but only 2 confirmed it. I did not ask for a refund like other people. I asked for a lesser refund. I said, look, you're giving me half the books. I'm quite happy with that. How about a refund on the books you didn't send, rather than a refund on the whole deal, which is what other people have been asking for. I never heard back from them, and I've never bought anything from Mongoose Publishing since, which is a shame because they have continued to put out some nice things. But I don't buy their stuff now. After that, there was a gap, and then Manticore Verlag, a German publisher, picked up the rights to continue publishing the Lone Wolf books in English, and they started publishing the next books that Mongoose hadn't done, not with the Mongoose artwork, and those were quite nice, and I was meaning to get around to them, and then they kind of stopped after a few years, and then there came, the printing press, the Holmgard Press. Holmgard, of course, being the capital of Sommerland, down here on the map. The Holmgard Press are printing new definitive editions, which have similar expanded material in the back to the Mongoose editions, although I don't think it is the same material. They have new illustrations that are heavily inspired by the original illustrations, internal illustrations that is, in that they copy them but modernize them a bit, by which I don't mean changing the style of what the characters are wearing, but the style of the art, the way things are presented, has been a bit modernized, and it looks great. And I do mean to get hold of some of those at some point, especially as they, I think, are very near to printing book 29, the first of the... Actually, they might have put out book 30 by this point. I know they put out the Autumn Snow trilogy, which I failed to get hold of, and I should try to get hold of. And they put out the Huntress trilogy, which I do have, and I've noticed they seem to have changed the combat rules in that one, which might just be for that one, or it could... I don't know about the Grey Star series of 4 books which comes off. However, what we do have is Project Aeon. Project Aeon existed before the Lone Wolf mega deal from Mongoose Publishing. Joe Deaver, the author of the Lone Wolf series, gave Project Aeon permission to host all of the original versions of the books, not the new updated versions or improved versions or expanded versions, only the original ones, on their website for free for everyone to read forever. And that is great. It means that I can play through a lot of the series. Now, I have played these books for what now? About 36 years, on and off. I am quite familiar with, I would say, 5 or 6 of the original 9. I'd say books 1, 3, 4, well, 1, Let's see. 1, 3, 7, 8, 9. 2. Not so much 5, 6, or 7. Not so much 5 or 6. So yeah, about 5 of the original 9, I think, that I owned. I was able to get hold of books 10 to 12 at one point, originals, but I've never played them. I do know that in book 11 or 12, if you take the Summer Sword with you on the adventure, you get auto-killed, just for having it. Anyway, I've waffled on for long enough. I think it's time I begin. This is going to be a more structured playthrough than some of my other game playthroughs because I'm a bit more familiar. That being said, I haven't played this one in quite a few years now, properly. So we will see how it goes. And because I'm treating purchase for Definitive Edition from Holmgard Press, sounds absolutely lovely. I don't know about read online, that doesn't sound like a purchase. So we'll go for the standard original version, multi-page edition, simple, simplified. There's lots of different ways you can choose how you want to, experience a book, and that's great. And here we go. I'm going for the read online option to give the website traffic rather than the downloaded version, which I probably could do, And we'll start from the beginning and work our way through, and I'll talk my way through some choices. I have here the character sheet from the previous aborted attempt. I'll obviously be re-rolling stats, and we'll see how we go. You are Lone Wolf. In a devastating attack, the Darklords have destroyed the monastery where you were learning the skills of the Lords. You are the sole survivor. In flight from the dark, you swear revenge, but first you must reach Holmgard to warn the king of the gathering evil. Relentlessly, the servants of darkness hunt you across your country, and every turn of the page presents a new challenge. Choose your skills and your weapons carefully, for they can help you succeed in the most fantastic and terrifying journey of your life. Now, I will say, in Fighting Fantasy, it would literally be an issue of, do you have this item? If not, you are dead. And yes, that can happen in Lone Wolf as well. But rather, it tends to be, do you have this item? If so, it can help you and make this a bit easier. Otherwise, it's going to be harder. And you could still just get a straight-up auto-kill. Joe Deaver, the creator of the best-selling Lone Wolf adventure books and novels, has achieved worldwide recognition in 3 creative fields: as an award-winning author of international renown, as an acclaimed musician and composer, and as a games designer specializing in role-playing games. On graduating from college in 1974, Joe Deaver became a professional musician, and for several years he worked in the music industry in Europe and the United States. While working in Los Angeles in 1977, the year I was born, he discovered a then little-known game called Dungeons & Dragons. Although the game was in its infancy, Joe at once realized its huge potential and began designing his own role-playing games along similar conceptual lines. These first games were to form the basis of the fantasy world called Magnamund, which later became the setting for the Lone Wolf books. 5 years later, in 1982, at the Origins Game Fair, Joe won the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons World Championship in Baltimore, an event held before 16,000 people. Inspired and encouraged by his success at Origins, Joe decided to quit the music business and devote his time to writing and game design. It's actually funny, he played a ranger or thief who was evil, and when the party had finished their adventure in the dungeon, they kept giving him all the treasure to carry, and he just took all the treasure, locked the door, locked him in to starve to death, and walked off with all the treasure for himself, and won the event. In 1983, after a brief spell at Games Workshop in London, he wrote Flight from the Dark, the first Lone Wolf interactive gamebook. His manuscript immediately attracted a frenzy of interest from 3 major London publishing companies, all of whom bid for world rights. Joe accepted an offer of publication from Hutchinson's, later to become Century Hutchinson Limited, now Random House UK, and Flight from the Dark was first published in 1984. In fact, originally, Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone asked him to write a Fighting Fantasy book, and he said he wanted to write a series of Fighting Fantasy books with links and the ability to carry items across between, and they liked the idea, and then they told him how much they would pay him for it, and he found the offer to be a lot less than he was comfortable with, and so he ended up taking it to other publishers, and eventually one of them picked it up. This first book sold more than 100,000 copies within its first month of publication, and overseas rights were snapped up by 12 countries, including the United States, France, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Sweden. I am led to believe that Lone Wolf is very popular in Italy and Sweden, and America quite a bit as well. The success of Joe's first book laid the foundations for the future of the Lone Wolf series, which has sold over 11 million copies around the world. Beginning in 1996, Joe worked in the computer games industry, as scriptwriter and games design consultant. In late 1999, Joe gave his readers his Millennium gift by sharing his works freely through what became Project Aeon. Other creators added their own gifts to his: Gary Chalk, Brian Williams, Ian Page, Rob Adams, Paul Bonner, Melvin Grant, Richard Hook, Peter Andrew Jones, Cyril Julian, Peter Lyon, Trevor Newton, Peter Barr, and Graham Round. After a brave and private 10-year battle of illness, Joe passed away in November 2016, leaving behind a legacy of goodness and honour that has earned him a loyal, enduring following among the readers who continue to find adventure in the worlds he created. I do remember hearing of his death, and I was very sad at the time. Gary Chalk, the illustrator of the early Lone Wolf series, the first 7 books, was born in 1952, grew up in Hertfordshire, in England. Being interested in history, he began playing war games at the age of 15. In fact, he even wrote a war game called Fantasy Warlords, which I have played a number of times. It is an interesting game, let's put it that way. When he graduated from college with a Bachelor of Arts in Design, Gary spent 3 years training in a studio before becoming a teacher in art and design. Gary was working as a children's book illustrator when he became involved in adventure gaming, an interest which eventually led to the creation of several successful games. He is the inventor and illustrator of some of Britain's biggest-selling fantasy games, including Cry Havoc, Starship Captain, and Battle Cars, co-designed with Ian Livingstone. He is also known for his work on the very successful game Talisman. Indeed, Gary did, I believe, all the art for the first edition of Talisman, and it was very popular and sold lots of copies, and people loved it. Gary was working at Games Workshop when Joe asked him to illustrate some of his manuscript of Flight from the Dark. The two teamed up after that, and they continued to work together until the 8th book in the series, The Jungle of Horrors. 8 books, not 9. At that point, I believe there was a falling out over who had created what and how much creativity Joe and Gary had each put into the project, and they didn't speak to each other for many, many years, but they did meet pace before the end, before Joe passed away in 2016. I think it was like 2011, 2012 they made up and started working together again. It was great. Interestingly, Gary Chalk continued to do cover pictures for the French editions of later Lone Wolf books, and for a lot of Lone Wolf fan material and supportive material in France. I think he lives in France these days. He was due to appear at the Fighting Fantasy Fest before last, I believe, but was unable to appear due to an emergency dentistry situation. Don't know what that was, but it must have been horrible. Gary has also drawn the illustrations in Redwall and related books, the Prince of Shadows gamebook series, and several books which he also authored. The Prince of Shadows was a gamebook series in which you played an actor who was the illegitimate heir to the throne of the kingdom. It was interesting. I think I played book 2. It was quite fun. Gary continues to enjoy wargaming and works as an illustrator and model maker. When asked, Gary generously and unhesitantly allowed Project Aeon to include his illustrations so that readers the world over could enjoy his iconic contribution to the first 8 Lone Wolf books. Let's now skip the dedication to Mel and Yin. Okay, we didn't skip it. Acknowledgements, the usual. These are later than the original. I don't think we get copyright information, but we get to go to the story so far. In the northern land of Sommerlund, it has been the custom for many centuries to send the children of the warrior lords to the Monastery of Kai. There they are taught the skills and disciplines of their noble fathers. The Kai monks are masters of their art, and the children in their charge love and respect them in spite of the hardships of their training. For one day, when they have finally learnt the secret skills of the Kai, they will return to their homes equipped in mind and body to defend themselves against the constant threat of war from the Darklords of the West. In olden times, during the Age of the Black Moon, the Darklords waged war on Sommerlund. The conflict was a long and bitter trial of strength that ended in victory for the Somlending at the great battle of the Massacre Gorge. King Ulnar and the allies of Durinor broke the Darklands armies at the pass of Moichura and forced them back into the bottomless abyss of Massacre Gorge. Vashna, mightiest of the Darklords, was slain upon the sword of King Ulnar, called Sommersword, the Sword of the Sun. Since that age, the Darklords have vowed vengeance upon Sommerlund and the house of Ulnar. Now it is in the morning of the feast of Ferman, when all of the Kai Lords are present at the monastery for celebrations. Suddenly a great black cloud comes from out of the western skies. So many are the numbers of the black-winged beasts that fill the sky that the sun is completely hidden. The Darklords, ancient enemy of the Somlending, are attacking. War has begun. On this fateful morning you, Silent Wolf, the name given to you by the Kai, have been sent to collect firewood in the forest as a punishment for your inattention in class. As you are preparing to return, you see to your horror a vast cloud of black leathery creatures swoop down and engulf the monastery. Now, every Kai Lord is given a name, and one of the beauties of the original books was that just inside the map, just past the map, but pretty much inside the front cover, was a beautiful scroll with a picture of a knight charging with a lance, and the inscription, "The bearer of this scroll, namely," and then a place to write your name, "is an initiate in the ranks of the Kai." And that felt really special, that you could make yourself part of the story. And speaking of which, if you have a copy of the Somlending sourcebook from Cubicle 7, I am Kai Initiate, Soul of Stone, the dwarf friend. Just so you know. Yeah, slightly older picture there, but yes. So literally, Kai Lord, Kai Initiate, Soul of Stone plays Lone Wolf. Dropping the wood, you race to the battle that has already begun, but in the unnatural dark you stumble and strike your head on a low tree branch. As you lose consciousness, the last thing you see in the poor light is the walls of the monastery crashing to the ground. Many hours pass before you wake. With tears in your eyes, you now survey the scene of destruction. Raising your face to the clear sky, you swear vengeance on the Darklords for the massacre of the Kai warriors, and with a sudden flash of realization you know what you must do. You must set off on a perilous journey to the capital city to warn the king of the terrible threat that now faces his people, for you are now the last of the Kai. You are now the Lone Wolf. So clearly, Kai Initiate Soul of Stone was slain at the Kai Monastery with all the other monks. However, it would be nice to imagine that his spirit is guiding Lone Wolf on his journey, perhaps with the souls of all the true Kai Lords. Because we might really need it. The game rules. You keep track of your adventure on the action chart. We will open that in another tab here. The action chart. Oh, this is not the original action chart. This is a slightly newer version with simplified illustrations, but yeah, it's basically the same. It's not form fillable. Then I know there's an app you can get hold of that sort of you put in your stats and it runs the fights for you as you play the books, but let's hold off on that for a moment. But yeah, you have combat skill, endurance points. You have a place to record your combats where you put Lone Wolf's endurance points, the enemy's endurance points, and the combat ratio. You have your Kai disciplines. A novice only gets 1. An Intuit gets 2. A Doan gets 3. An Acolyte gets 4. And an Initiate gets 5 skills. Space for 2 weapons. You can carry 1 weapon in each hand. You know, I should just go back to the rules here. During your training as a Kai Lord, you have developed fighting prowess, combat skill, and physical stamina, endurance. Before you set off on your adventure, you need to measure how effective your training has been. To do this, take a pencil and with your eyes closed, point with the blunt end of it onto the random number table. If you pick 0, it counts as 0. The random number table is different for each book, and obviously you can't see if my eyes are open or closed, so this isn't very fair. So I have here my beautiful Lone Wolf green D10 with the wolf's head symbol on where the 10 would be, because the 10 is 0 in this system and means nothing. We are rolling from 0 to 9, so we're rolling like a D10 minus 1. So we're going to use Map Tools dice tonight and look for maybe some kind of alternative in the future. That being said, rolling random starting ability scores is going to be really rough for the entire series, so we will see how it goes. I might just go look, it's 2d10, so average 5.5 each. That gives me 11 points, but we got the zeros to take away, so it's really 9 points to split between the 2 ability scores and spread them as I wish. The first number you pick from a random number table in this way represents your combat skill. Add 10 to the number you picked and write the total in the combat skill section of your action chart. For example, if your pencil fell on the number 4 in the random number table, you would write in a combat skill of 14. When you fight, your combat skill will be pitted against that of your enemy. A high score in this section is therefore very desirable. The second number you pick from the random number table represents your powers of endurance. Add 20 to the number and write the total in the endurance section of your action chart. So, if your pencil fell on the number 6 on the random number table, you would have 26 endurance points. If you are wounded in combat, you will lose endurance points. If at any time your endurance falls to 0 or below, you are dead, and the adventure is over. Lost endurance points can be regained during the course of the adventure, but your number of endurance points can never go above the number with which you start your adventure, except for certain items which allow it to be raised higher. Let's do that now. So we are rolling now for... What I might do is just do 2 rolls and then assign them. So we have a 3 and a 2. Oh god, that's terrible. Are we on Map Tools dice again? We're on Map Tools dice again, aren't we? Horrible, horrible things, right. There we go. Right, let's try that again, shall we? A 9 and a 2. Okay. I will take the combat skill of 19 and the endurance of 22. 22 is a bit low. There are things we can do to mitigate low ability scores, such as taking weapon mastery as a skill, for example, or taking items that increase combat skill or endurance points. Kai disciplines. Over the centuries, the Kai monks have mastered the skills of the warrior. These skills are known as the Kai disciplines, and they are taught to all Kai Lords. You have learned only 5 of the skills listed below. The choice of which skills these are is for you to make. As all the disciplines may be of use to you at some point in your perilous quest, pick your 5 with care. The correct use of a discipline at the right time can save your life. When you have chosen your 5 disciplines, enter them in the Kai disciplines section of your action chart, and every time you complete a book, you get to learn a new skill. Camouflage. This discipline enables a Kai Lord to blend in with his surroundings. In the countryside, you can hide undetected among trees and rocks and pass close to an enemy without being seen. In a town or city, it enables him to look and sound like a native of that area, and can help him to find shelter or a safe hiding place. If you choose this skill, write Camouflage on your action chart. Camouflage is a good... They're all good skills, actually. They're all really good. And the fact that you get half of them means that any time you're presented with a check to see if you have a useful skill, there's a pretty good chance you'll have it. And if they say, hey, if you don't have this skill, okay, how about this as a backup skill for a slightly less beneficial result? You know, there are times where if you don't have the main skill in a situation, you might have a secondary or even a tertiary skill. So there's plenty of chances. It's not about having the skill or not having the skill. It's about if you want to use the skill and what type of hero you want to be and what kind of story you want to tell. Hunting. This skill ensures that a Kai Lord will never starve in the wild. He will always be able to hunt for food for himself, except in areas of wasteland and desert. The skill also enables a Kai Lord to be able to move stealthily while stalking his prey. If you choose this skill, write Hunting. No need for a meal when instructed to eat on your action chart. I'm not going to read the if you choose this skill every time now. Sixth Sense. This skill may warn a Kai Lord of imminent danger. It may also reveal the true purpose of a stranger or strange object encountered in your adventure. Tracking. This skill enables a Kai Lord to make the correct choice of a path in the wild, to discover the location of a person or object in a town or city, and to read the secrets of footprints or tracks. Healing. This discipline can be used to restore endurance points lost in combat. If you possess the skill, you may restore 1 endurance point to your total for every numbered section of the book you pass through in which you are not involved in combat. This is only to be used after your endurance has fallen below its original level, because you are restoring, not gaining. Remember that your endurance cannot rise above its original level, although certain things can increase its original level. Weapon skill. Upon entering the Kai Monastery, each initiate is taught to master one type of weapon. If weapon skill is one of your Kai disciplines, pick a number in the usual way from a random number table, and then find the corresponding weapon from the list below. This is the weapon in which you have skill. When you enter combat carrying this weapon, you may add 2 to your combat skill. The fact that you are skilled with a weapon does not mean you set out on the adventure carrying that particular weapon. However, you will have opportunities to acquire weapons in the course of your adventures. If you pick the axe, you are lucky enough to be skilled in the one weapon Lone Wolf is carrying at the start of the adventure. This will be explained fully in the equipment section. We have 0 is dagger, 1 is spear, 2 mace, 3 short sword, 4 warhammer, 5 sword, 6 axe, 7 sword, 8 quarterstaff and 9 broadsword. It's a random roll. You cannot carry more than 2 weapons. If you choose this skill, write weapon skill in weapon name +2. It is explained later on that weapon skill doesn't stack. You can't go in with a pair of matched weapons and double the bonus. You just get it for having one of them, and that's enough. Mind Shield. The Darklords and many of the evil creatures in their command have the ability to attack you using their mind force. The Kai discipline of Mind Shield prevents you from losing any endurance points when subjected to this form of attack. It also means you don't lose consciousness or lose concentration. Like if you're climbing a rope and someone attacks you with Mind Shield, you might let go of the rope because of the pain and to try and clutch at your head or just be so stunned. So Mind Shield is a very nice ability. Mind Blast. This enables a Kai Lord to attack an enemy using the force of his mind, like certain enemies of the Darklords do. It can be used at the same time as normal combat weapons, and adds 2 points to your combat skill. Note that all the creatures encountered in this adventure will be harmed by... Not all the creatures encountered in this adventure will be harmed by Mind Blast. You will be told if a creature is immune. So, Mind Shield protective, Mind Blast offensive version of a similar psychic power. Animal Kinship. This skill enables a Kai Lord to communicate with some animals and to be able to guess the intentions of others. And finally, mind over matter. Mastery of this discipline enables a Kai Lord to move small objects with his powers of concentration. Small objects. It doesn't let you levitate things. Actually, in one of the novels, they did have low-level Kai monks levitating things with mind over matter. In the series, it's never been like Indian rope trick, more make that vase fall off that shelf and smash loudly so that they think I'm hiding over there instead of over here, and things like that. If you successfully complete the mission, as set in Book 1 of Lone Wolf, you may add a further Kai discipline of your choice to your action chart in Book 2. This additional skill, together with your 5 skills and any special items that you have picked up in Book 1, may then be used in the next adventure of the Lone Wolf series, which is called Fire on the Water. Now, I'm going to go with the same skills I chose last time. I like Sixth Sense. It's not only that it warns you of danger, but it gives you, a little bit of insight sometimes, but it's a very helpful one. Tracking is great for, hunting, but also hiding, I think, a bit as well, right? It's not camouflage. Let's see. Tracking, make the correct choice on the path and the what. So yeah, discover location of a person or object of a talent. So we are on the run. We're being hunted by the evil armies and trying to get from the Kai Monastery down to Holmgard. It doesn't look very far on this map. But actually, when we take the scale into account, it's quite a way. The fact that there's an evil army crawling all over the area means we want to be pretty careful about it too. So tracking will tell me if enemies have been through the area recently. Let me pick up their trail and know which path to avoid. For example, healing, very useful ability, and it's not only for myself. There will be times in the adventure where I can use healing. Mind Shield, look, some enemies use Mind Blast. It's really nasty. And Animal Kinship. Of course I took Animal Kinship. Lone Wolf is a man of the wilds, a man of the woods. He loves animals. Except for horses, if you know the series. Lone Wolf loves horses, but the amount of horses that he's riding that die while he's riding them over the course of the series is quite high. Equipment. You're dressed in the green tunic and cloak of a Kai initiate. You have little with you to arm yourself for survival. All you possess is an axe, note under weapons in your action chart, and a backpack containing 1 meal, note under meals in your action chart. So we have 1 meal. Each meal takes up a separate slot in the backpack. You discover amongst the smoking ruins of the monastery a map of Sommerlund, note under your special items on the action chart, showing the capital city of Holmgard and the land of Jurenor far to the east. You place the map inside your tunic for safety. You also find one of the following, and we will roll to see what we find. We have rolled a 6. I keep opening this. I should just close it, because otherwise I shall blunder. 6 is, if we'd rolled a 4, that would be very nice. The chainmail waistcoat adds 4 endurance points to your total, meaning we would have had 26 endurance points. The helmet adds 2 endurance points. We can get these later, by the way. We can get helmet, mail waistcoat, and some other protective items. 6. Healing potion, backpack item. This can restore 4 endurance points to your total when swallowed after combat. You have enough for 1 dose. So, the mace is gone. There we go. To discover which of the above you find, you must pick a number from a random number table. We did that. And find the corresponding article on the list. Note this on your action chart under the heading given in brackets, and make a note of any effect it may have on your endurance points. There are also items like a shield will give you additional combat skill, for example. I think there's a magic helmet we can get later on that also increases combat skill. I think it might be in book 3. I'm not sure. How to carry equipment. Now that you have your equipment, the following lists show you how it is carried. You don't need to make notes, but you can refer back to this list in the course of your adventure. A sword is carried in the hand, helmet worn on the head, food placed in the backpack, chainmail waistcoat worn on the body, mace carried in the hand, healing potion carried in the backpack, quarterstaff carried in the hand, spear carried in the hand, gold crowns carried in the belt pouch, and the broadsword carried in the hand. The pouch can hold 50 gold crowns, and it is currently empty. How much can you carry? Weapons. The maximum number of weapons that you may carry is 2. This is tricky because really there's a magic dagger, magic sword, and magic bow that would be nice to have after book 2 or 3. And, well, after book 5, really. Backpack items. These must be stored in your backpack. Because space is limited, you may only keep a maximum of 8 articles, including meals, in your backpack at any one time. Special items are not carried in the backpack. When you discover a special item, you will be told how to carry it. I would presume the chainmail waistcoat and helmet are special items. They are worn upon the body and the head. Gold crowns are always carried in the belt pouch. It will hold a maximum of 50 crowns. Food is carried in your backpack. Each meal counts as 1 item, and the backpack can only carry 8 items. Additionally, the bundle of rope, if we ever get hold of it, counts as 2 items in the backpack. Any item that may be of use and can be picked up in your adventure and entered on your action chart is given capital letters in the text. Unless you are told it is a special item, carry it in your backpack. How to use your equipment. Weapons aid you in combat. If you have the Kai discipline of weapon skill and the correct weapon, it adds 2 to your combat skill. If you enter combat with no weapons, deduct 4 points from your combat skill, and fight with your bare hands. If you find a weapon during your adventure, you may pick it up and use it. Remember, you can only carry 2 weapons at once. You may only use 1 weapon at a time in combat, so you can carry 2 weapons, but you only get to use 1 of them. So weapon skill can't double up for carrying 2 of the same weapon. At least not this early in the series. It might later on, I don't know. Backpack items. During your travels, you will discover various useful items which you may wish to keep. Remember, you can only carry 8 items in your backpack at once. You may exchange or discard them at any point when you are not involved in combat. Special items. Each special item has a particular purpose or effect. You may be told this when the item is discovered, or it may be revealed to you as the adventure progresses. The local currency is the crown. This is a small gold coin. Gold crowns can be used on your adventure to pay for transport, food, or even as a bribe. Many of the creatures that you will encounter possess gold crowns or have them hidden in their lairs. Whenever you kill a creature, you may take any gold crowns that it has and put them in your belt pouch. Food. You will need to eat regularly during your adventure. If you do not have any food when you are instructed to eat a meal, you will lose free endurance points. If you have chosen the Kai discipline of hunting as one of your 5 skills, you will not need to tick off a meal when instructed to eat. So, in Fighting Fantasy, eating food restores 4 stamina points. In Lone Wolf, eating food prevents you from losing free endurance points from starvation. The healing potion can restore 4 endurance points to your total when swallowed after combat. It cannot be used to increase endurance points immediately prior to a combat. There is only enough for 1 dose. If you discover any other potions during the adventure, you will be told then of their effect. All healing potions are backpack items. Now we get to the rules of combat. There will be occasions on your adventure when you have to fight an enemy. The enemy's combat skill and endurance points are given in the text. Lone Wolf's aim in the combat is to kill the enemy by reducing his endurance points to 0, while losing as few endurance points himself as possible. At the start of combat, when Lone Wolf and the enemy's endurance point, enter Lone Wolf and the enemy's endurance points in the appropriate boxes on the combat record section of your action chart. The sequence for combat is as follows. Add any extra points gained through your Kai disciplines to your current combat skill total. Subtract the combat skill of your enemy from this total. The result is your combat ratio. Enter it on the action chart. So going back to the action chart, you will see here the middle column is combat ratio. So we have Lone Wolf endurance points, enemy endurance points, combat ratio. Now this may sound a little tricky because Lone Wolf's combat skill can be lower than the creature he is fighting him, and this book did not explain the concept of negative numbers at all, which we had not covered in school at that time. For example, Lone Wolf with combat skill 15 is ambushed by a winged devil with combat skill 20. He is not given the opportunity to evade combat, but must stand and fight as the creature swoops down on him. Lone Wolf has the Kai discipline of Mind Blast, so he adds 2 points to his combat skill, giving him a total combat skill of 17. He subtracts the winged devil's combat skill from his own, giving a combat ratio of -3. 17 minus 20 is -3. -3 is noted on the action chart as the combat ratio. When you have your combat ratio, pick a number from the random number table. Turn to the combat results table, the most famous table in the series. Now this should be depicted as 2 pages. This is the left-hand page, this is the right-hand page. We look at the combat ratio along the top and our random number down the side. Find the number that is the same as your combat ratio and cross-reference it with the random number you have picked. The random numbers appear on the side of the chart. You now have the number of endurance points lost by both Lone Wolf and his enemy in this round of combat. E represents points lost by the enemy, LW represents points lost by Lone Wolf. It is worth noting that there are Ks on the chart. K means outright killed regardless of how many endurance points they have remaining. For example, the combat ratio between Lone Wolf and the Winged Devil has been established as -3. If the number taken from the random number table is 6, then the result of the first round is -3, 6, Lone Wolf loses 3 endurance points, the enemy loses 6 endurance points. Indeed, Lone Wolf loses 3 endurance points, the Winged Devil loses 6 endurance points. On the action chart, mark the changes in endurance points to the participants in the combat. Unless otherwise instructed, or unless you have an option to evade, the next round of combat starts now, with picking a new number from a random number table. Repeat the sequence from stage 3, which is back up here. Get a random number. This process of combat continues until the endurance points of either the enemy or Lone Wolf are reduced to 0, at which point that combatant is declared dead. If Lone Wolf is dead, the adventure is over. If the enemy is dead, Lone Wolf proceeds, but with his endurance points possibly reduced. A summary of combat rules appears in the back of this book, and indeed appears in the back of every book in the series, and literally the next page from the combat summary is the combat results table. So, and actually, the combat rules summary is opposite the random number table. So it goes random number table, combat rules summary, combat results table at the back of the book. And the random number table is different in each book, so you can't really learn where the best numbers are, because when you go to the next book, you'll be completely messed up trying to pick numbers that end up being like a 3 or something. So there's our combat rules summary in case we need it. To evade combat, you may only do this when the text of the adventure offers you the opportunity. You undertake 1 round of combat in the usual way. All points lost by the enemy are ignored. Only Lone Wolf loses the endurance points. If the book offers the chance to take evasive action in place of combat, it can be taken in the first round of combat or any subsequent round. Obviously, the damage done to the enemy is ignored because you won't be fighting them anymore, you'll have run away, it won't matter how badly hurt they are, and also, you're not trying to hurt them, you're trying to run away, you're not going to do any damage. Yeah. You may only evade if the text of a particular section allows you to do so. The following table is a guide to the ranks and titles that are bestowed upon Kai Lords at each stage in their training. As you successfully complete each book in the Lone Wolf series, you will gain an additional Kai discipline and gradually progress towards mastery of the 10 basic Kai disciplines. Novice, Intuit, Doan, Acolyte, Initiate. You begin the Lone Wolf adventures at this level of Kai training. Aspirant, Guardian, Warman or Journeyman, Savant, and Master. Beyond the 10 basic skills of the Kai mastery await the secrets of the higher Kai disciplines, or Magna Kai. By acquiring the wisdom of the Magna Kai, a Kai Lord can progress towards the ultimate achievement and become a Kai Grand Master. Your mission will be one of great danger, for the Darklords and their servants are a cruel and fierce enemy who give and expect no mercy. Use the map to help you steer a correct course for the capital. Make notes as you progress through the story, for they will be of great help in future adventures. Many things that you find will aid you during the adventure. Some special items will be of use in future Lone Wolf adventures, and others may be red herrings of no real use at all, so be selective in what you decide to keep. There are many routes to the king, but only one involves a minimum of danger. With a wise choice of Kai disciplines and a great deal of courage, any player should be able to complete the mission, no matter how weak their initial combat skill or endurance points score. Making me feel a little bit bad about resetting the dice and re-rolling stats there, although those were particularly low. And we're trying for a marathon, not just for one book. The honour and memory of the Kai Lords will go with you on your perilous journey. Good luck. And with that, we turn to section 1. You must make haste, for you sense it is not safe to linger by the smoking remains of the ruined monastery. The black-winged beasts could return at any moment. You must set out for the Somlending capital of Holmgard and tell the king the terrible news of the massacre, that the whole elite of Kai warriors save yourself have been slaughtered. Without the Kai Lords to lead her armies, Sommerlund will be at the mercy of their ancient enemy, the Darklords. Fighting back tears, you bid farewell to your dead kinsmen. Silently you promise that their deaths will be avenged. You turn away from the ruins and carefully descend the steep track. At the foot of the hill, the path splits into 2 directions, both leading into a large wood. Now, we are in the Kai Monastery. The path is presumably going towards the bridge here, or directly towards the river. So left and right. Left would presumably be east, right would be west, as we're heading directly away. However, we also have the opportunity to use the Kai discipline of Sixth Sense, which would make a lot of sense, because there are many enemies around here. I would like to point out at this point, actually, that Holmgard Press are going to be launching a Lone Wolf board game crowdfunding project within the next few days, actually, probably when the 3rd episode of this playthrough goes up. And I am intrigued. There have been news and glimpses of a Lone Wolf miniature skirmish game that looks really wonderful, and I've been looking forward to that a lot for a few years now. That is not this game. This game is more akin to the game of Risk, played out on the world of Magnamund, where you have one player playing the good nations of the world, so Sommerlund, Juranor, and their allies, and the other player playing the Darklords and their armies. trying to take over and dominate the world. And Lone Wolf is like a thing on the side who goes off doing quests and gaining experience, becoming more powerful. It's nice. It's not what I was hoping for. The miniatures game is still coming. It'll come later on, but obviously if this game is very successful, it will help that. And it does appear to be using a lot of the same miniature sculpts. So I might just back it. I'm a massive Lone Wolf fan. Of course I probably will. Anyway, I will absolutely use the Kai discipline of Sixth Sense. And look at this. It's all hyperlinked. This isn't like doing the Bloodsword books. Although when the Bloodsword computer game comes out, I will love that to bits as well. Your Sixth Sense has warned you that some of the creatures that attacked the monastery are searching the two paths for any survivors of their raid. But you can avoid both tracks by making your way through the undergrowth of the woods. We could head directly south towards the river, or we could cut through the heavier foliage towards the northeast. Now, south towards the river is the direction we are going, towards Holmgard. The enemies will be searching the area because they are not arrogant enough to assume they have slain all of the Kai. There might be some survivors who were not present at the monastery, and they will be hunting for those to try and hunt us down. I am clearly a witness to this massacre. I need to go and tell the king. This is my objective. So the journey is like south and east. They will be expecting me to go south. If I go northeast, I will be following the Fighting Fantasy rule. And the Fighting Fantasy rule is only a default to be ignored if you have a better thing to do. Our better thing to do is to head south towards Holmgard, but that's what the enemy will be expecting. So I will go northeast. And I think cut through the heavier foliage doesn't mean like with a machete hack your way through it with the axe. I think it just means, it's like a shortcut. It's like a head in that direction. It's a figure of speech. You have cut your way through the thick undergrowth. Okay, no, I'm actually hacking my way through the axe. Okay, I think. You have cut your way through the thick undergrowth for nearly half an hour when you hear the beat of wings above the trees. Looking up, you can just make out the shape of a Kran approaching from the north. It is one of the monsters that attacked the monastery, and on its back are two grey-skinned creatures armed with long spears. These are mountain Gyaks, evil servants of the Darklords, full of hatred and malice. Many centuries ago, their ancestors were used by the Darklords to build the infernal city of Helgedad, which lies in the volcanic wastelands beyond the Derncrag range of mountains. The construction of the city was long and tortuous, and only the strongest of the Gyaks survived the heat and poisonous atmosphere of Helgedad. Hidden by the trees, you freeze, keeping absolutely still as the Kran passes overhead and disappears towards the south. When you are sure that it has gone, you move off once again into the forest. Now, dear viewers, I know for certain 100% that Joe Diva insists it is pronounced Gyak. However, I didn't know Joe Diva when I first picked up the book when I was 10 or 11 years old, and Gyak sounds like a monster. Gyak is strong. The Gyaks are coming. Imagine Christopher Lee saying, "The Gyaks are coming." I mean, or some Geordie going, "The Gyaks are coming." It doesn't have the same sort of weight and emphasis. It doesn't make them sound nasty or scary. Gyaks sounds kind of weak and feeble. And in a way, the Gyaks aren't particularly strong monsters, but Gyak sounds more like a monster, and it's pretty much the only word associated with Magnamund that I pronounce differently. I mean, I was the same on Barnadon and the Drakarim and so on. It's not Drakarim, it's Drakarim. But anyway, yeah. You have covered about a quarter of a mile when you hear shouting and a noise like thunderclaps ahead. Edging nearer, you soon make out a clearing that you realize to be the site of the ruins of Raumas, an ancient forest temple. A war party of Gyaks, some 25 or 30 strong, are attacking the ruins from all sides. Many more of the Gyaks are dead or dying among the broken pillars of marble, but still they assault whatever is hidden inside. Suddenly, a bolt of blue lightning rips through the front rank of Gaiaks, sending the armor-clad creatures tumbling in all directions. A Gaiak taller than the others and dressed from head to foot in black chainmail curses at his troops as he whips them forward with a barbed flail. With weapon ready, you move to the edge of the clearing under cover of the thick foliage, and try to catch a glimpse of the defenders. To your amazement, the ruins are being defended by a young man no older than yourself. You recognize his sky-blue robes embroidered with stars. He is a young theurgist of the Magician's Guild of Toran, an apprentice of magic. And here we have the illustration. There used to be, I think, a way of opening it slightly larger. But no. There we go. So here's our magician. Actually, this is pretty much the exact pose the original Barnadon miniature was in. His left arm was slightly lower, closer to the body, and the hand was a little flatter. But yeah, a nice miniature. I got it somewhere. I painted it many, many years ago. And here we see a Gaiak smoke emitting from where he was struck by lightning. 5 Gaiaks charged forwards, their spears race to stab the apprentice as he hurriedly retreats deeper into the ruins. You see him turn and raise his left hand just before a bolt of blue flame shoots from his fingertips into the snarling Gaiak soldiers. Close to where you are hidden, you see a Gaiak scuttle past and hurry and climb one of the pillars of the temple. He has a long curved dagger in his mouth, and he is about to jump on the wizard standing below. And there we see him, although it's in his hand rather than his mouth. But hey, it's still a pretty nasty looking monster. We could shout a warning to the wizard, rush forward and attack the Gaiak when he jumps. That feels like it might involve a dice roll. Pick up a chunk of temple marble and throw it at the Gaiak's head. Again, this feels like it could miss. Or we could turn and leave the battle area and run back into the woods. No, we will call out a warning to the wizard. Look out! The wizard hears your cry and spins around just in time to loose a searing bolt of energy at the Gaiak. The creature's head disintegrates in flames and its twitching body falls in a heap at the foot of the pillar. The Gaiak officer sees you and calls, "Oh God! Oh God!" to his cowering troops, who quickly run away from the ruins to the safety of the forest beyond. The young wizard wipes his brow and walks towards you, his hand extended in gratitude and friendship. I will say the Gaiak language is actually reasonably well developed. And we even learn from a Magnum and Companion that Gaiaks speak their sentences backwards. So it's literally the reverse of how we would say it in English. He is a young blonde-haired youth with deep brooding eyes. His face is lined with exhaustion and the grime of battle, and his long sky-blue robes bear evidence of living rough in the wilds. He shakes your hand and bows. "My eternal thanks, Kai Lord. My powers are nearly drained. Had you not come to my aid, I fear I would have ended my days atop a Gaiak lance." He is weak and unsteady on his feet. You take his arm and sit him down upon a fallen pillar where you listen intently to what he has to say. "My name is Barnadon. I am a journeyman to the Brotherhood of the Crystal Star, which is the Magician's Guild of Toran. My guildmaster has sent me to your monastery with this urgent message." He removes a vellum envelope from inside his robes and hands it to you. "As you see, I have opened the letter and read its contents. When the war started, I was on the highway with 2 travelling companions. The Kran attacked us and we lost each other in the forest during our escape." The letter is a warning to the Darklords that the Darklords have mustered a vast army beyond the Derncrag range. The Guildmaster urges the Kai to cancel the celebrations of Femharn and prepare for war. The Derncrag Mountains are here, and they mark the border between Sommerlund and the Darklands. "I fear we were betrayed," says Barnadon, his head bowed in sorrow. "One of my order, a brother called Vonotar, has explored the forbidden mysteries of the black art. 10 days ago he denounced the Brotherhood and killed one of our elders. He has since disappeared. It is rumoured that he now aids the Darklords. And this here is Vonotar on the cover of Book 3. He's also, if I just scroll down a little in this tab, on the cover of Book 2 there, and that is the pose for his miniature. I believe I have 2 copies of his miniature. one I painted, the other one I might not have done. It's been a long time. You tell Barnardon what has happened at the monastery and of your mission to warn the king. Silently, he removes a gold chain from around his neck and hands it to you. On the chain is a small crystal star pendant. It is the symbol of my brotherhood, and we are both truly brothers in this hour of darkness. It is a talisman of good fortune. May it protect you on your road ahead. You thank him and place the chain around your neck and slip the crystal star inside your shirt. Remember to mark it on your action chart. Later books assume that you keep the crystal star pendant and ask you if you possess it to see if you've ever met Barnardon. It may or may not also be useful in other situations. You may decide whether or not to keep the pendant. I like the fact they have footnotes here. That's interesting because obviously those weren't present in the originals. It is not listed as a special item. So even though it says you wear it inside your shirt, I will... I'll list that as a special item. And I'll even call it Barnardon's Crystal Star Amulet. Because it will be relevant, I think, in book 8 or 9. No, book 9, when we meet him again. We also meet him in book 4, I believe. 4 or 5. With a wave of his hand, Barnardon leaves the ruins and you continue your mission, pushing on through the thick woods ahead. You have not got far when you realise several pairs of yellow eyes are watching you from the undergrowth to your left. Suddenly, a black arrow skims the top of your head. It is a Gaiac ambush and you must run as fast as you can to escape it. As you race through the trees, you can hear the horrible cackle of the Gaiacs close behind you. Soon, the trees start to thin out and directly ahead you can see a rocky hillside. You can break cover and climb up the hill outside the trees, or you can change direction and continue your run through the forest. We have the skill of tracking. We do not have the skill of camouflage. If we run out into the open, the Gaiacs will find us quite easily. If we continue to run in the forest, we might manage to lose them. The mountain Gaiacs are unaccustomed to pursuing their prey through forests, and you soon outdistance them until finally the sound of their grunts and curses disappears completely. When you are satisfied that they have given up the chase, you stop for a few minutes to catch your breath and check your equipment. With the memory of your ruined monastery still blazing in your mind, you gather up your meagre belongings and push on. Just ahead, through the tall trees, you can see clumps of dark red gallows brush. Oh! It's 2 minutes past 3 in the morning. So 48 years and 12 minutes ago, I was born. Happy birthday, me. I get to record what I want on my birthday. I'm not going to record Evil Islands on my birthday. It'll have to wait a little. Just ahead, through the tall trees, you can see clumps of dark red gallows brush, a thorny briar with sharp crimson barbs. The common name for this forest weed is sleep-tooth, for the thorns are very sharp and can make you feel weak and sleepy if they scratch your skin, which is not ideal, as there are enemies looking for us. Now, we could go through it, because anything following us could get scratched and fall asleep, but so could we. Do we have the Kai discipline of tracking? We do! Excellent. You are very near a friendly village. Avoid the gallows brush and turn to 272. Okay, we are not going to walk through and get scratched by prickly thorns and fall asleep, and possibly murdered by something nasty while we sleep. Keeping a watchful eye on the sky above, you move quickly along the track. You recall that this route leads to Fogwood, a small cluster of huts that have been used by a family of charcoal burners for nearly 50 years. After 20 minutes, you reach the edge of a clearing where the huts are grouped in a small circle. There is no sign of the usual mist of wood smoke, which gives Fogwood its apt name, and the huts are unusually quiet. We do possess the Kai skill of tracking, but I suspect the Gaiacs have come and killed everyone. Using your skills, you detect Gaiac tracks around the perimeter of the clearing. The prints are fresh, and you can tell that these cruel minions of the Darklords were in the area less than 2 hours ago. Forewarned by this knowledge, you may decide to investigate the huts, and they may be lying in ambush, or rather avoid the clearing. Well, you know what? It is gone 3 in the morning. And I think I can leave... Nah, we'll just avoid the clearing. Keeping a careful watch on the huts for any sign of the enemy, you make your way around the clearing under the cover of the trees and bracken. Rejoining the track, you hurry away from Fogwood. In the distance, perched on the branch of an old tree, is a jet-black raven. We do not have the Kai discipline of animal kinship, which would allow us to call out to this bird. If we did, we would learn something. As you approach, the black bird flies off above the trees and soon disappears from view. You search the tree on which it was perched, but find nothing unusual. Rather than waste any more precious time, you continue off along the track. If I recall correctly, the bird is being mentally controlled by an agent of the Darklands. If we called out to it, it would be hostile to us, and we would know there was something wrong. If we see the bird again, we should not follow it, or we will be led to our doom. After a few minutes' walk, you see a stranger clad in red standing in the centre of the track ahead. He has his back towards you, and his head is covered by the hood of his robes. Perched on his outstretched arm is the black raven you saw earlier. We could call out to the stranger, approach the stranger cautiously, or attack with weapon drawn. I believe this is a Helghast. The Helghast is a psychic creature which is immune to normal weapons. We should absolutely not call out and get its attention. We should not rush an attack. We shall approach cautiously, hopefully hiding so the raven does not see us. Oh god, okay. You have taken less than 10 paces when the raven squawks a warning to the stranger. Turning to face you, the robed creature utters a piercing screech that freezes your blood and grips your stomach in fear and panic. It is a Vordak, a lieutenant of the Darklords and one of the undead. Within seconds, a host of Gaiacs appears at its side and attacks you. You fight bravely, but you are greatly outnumbered. The last thing you remember is the icy grasp of the Vordak's skeletal fingers as they close around your throat. Your life and your mission end here. Well, that's an unfortunate way to end the episode. Obviously, rushing in with weapon drawn to attack is not good. Calling out, this feels like we've walked straight into an auto-kill, bizarrely. But I know there's a way to survive this, I just can't remember what it is. Probably actually call out because it's at a distance and we have time to react. Oh god. That is brutal. So rushing into attack is the best option because we pre-wound it. That is really harsh. Okay. Well, we have got this far in the adventure without without having to make a single dice roll. So we can repeat our steps and come to here. So rush in, weapon drawn, attack because it's the same raven that flew away and came to this person. It's obviously reported. We can't take chances. So let's just check that again. Yeah. You're only 10 feet or so away from a robed stranger when the raven squawks a warning to its master, who instantly spins around. You are frozen in your tracks by the hideous apparition of a Vordak, a lieutenant of the Darklords and one of the undead. You must fight. Due to the surprise of your attack, you may add 2 points to your combat skill for the first round of combat only. Unless you have the Kai discipline of Mind Shield, deduct 2 points from your combat skill for the second and subsequent rounds of fighting, for the creature is attacking you with the power of its mind force, as well as with a large black mace. So, The Vordak has a endurance of 25 and a combat skill of 17. We have a combat skill of 19, so we're fighting at +2, +4 in the first round. Okay. A 3. Not ideal, but we'll take it. 3 in +4 is Lone Wolf loses 3, enemy loses 7. So, we suffer 3 damage, taking us down to 19 endurance points. The enemy loses 7, taking him down to 18. After this, we drop into the +2 column, and we roll again. 4. Okay. 4 in +2 is 6 and 3. So we've just done 1 less damage. So we suffer a nasty 3 damage, taking us down to 16. The enemy loses 6, down to 12. We fight on. 4. Well, just like last time, the enemy loses 6 endurance points, and we lose 3. And then we roll a 5. So the enemy then loses 7, and we only lose 2. So we are down to 11 endurance points, which hurts a hell of a lot. And our foe has been defeated. As the creature dies, its body slowly dissolves into a vile green liquid. You notice that all of the grass and plants beneath the smoking fluid are beginning to shrivel and die. A large, valuable-looking gem lies on the ground near to the decaying body. Further along the track, you can see a large war party of Gaiacs running towards you. We could take the gem. We don't have time to take the gem. I believe the gem is a trap. It will burn our hand and cause us incredible pain. Old memories, I know. We leave the item of evil and run. You dash. Oh, wait. Wait. This was a non-combat section. We recover 1 endurance point. Back up to 12. Then we run. And gain another endurance point back up to 13. Our healing is already kicking in. As you dash through the thickening trees, the shouts of the Gaiacs begin to fade behind you. You have nearly outdistanced them completely when you crash headlong into a tangle of low branches. Pick a number from random number table. I don't know if high or low is good. It varies over the course of the series. We have a 4. So we'll just have to take it. You are held by a mass of tangled branches and roots. Eventually you free your right hand, grab your weapon and hack your way slowly through the foliage to the clearer forest beyond. Your cloak is torn in several places and your left arm is cut and badly bruised above the elbow. Lose 2 endurance points, but regain 1 because it's a non-combat section, so we're actually on 14! Yeah, I know. Look, I'm excited. I'm alive. Okay. You have been trudging through the forest for nearly 2 hours. The nagging fear that you are lost begins to seem a reality. Apart from the occasional cry of a crane in the far distance, you have seen or heard no evidence that the enemy is in this part of the forest. As you descend a rocky hillock, you see something unusual in the tangled woods ahead. Also, we regain another point of endurance because it's a non-combat section. Surrounded by thorny briars and closely packed roots, you see the entrance of a tunnel disappearing into the hillside below. It is approximately 7 feet in height and just over 10 feet wide. As you get closer, you can feel a slight breeze coming from the inky blackness. If the other end of this tunnel emerges on the far side of the hill, it could save you many hours of difficult climbing. It could also harbour unknown danger. Well, I'm going to recover another point of endurance. And here, I think I will end the episode. I seem to recall that going through the tunnel is the correct choice, but it is dangerous, but also rewarding. But I'm going to hold off on that until next time. That will end our first episode of Flight from the Dark. Hey, I've had 1 auto kill already. Maybe I should keep track of them. There are a lot. And normally... yes, so to clarify, when it comes to death, I am treating the beginning of each book as a save point, and I'll go back to the beginning of the book. If, as in this case, I can reach the same position as before without any dice rolls at all, I will just skip back to where I was, because otherwise it's just rereading the same sections. Also, I won't heavily reread sections we have experienced before. With that being said, I hope you have all enjoyed this episode, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in the next one. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll say bye-bye for now. Cheerio, everyone.